Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the fifth episode of the Elouise Show. And like I said, I'm super stoked for today's guest. Today we have Bronx native Chef Thomas Stevens. Chef Thomas Stevens is the founder of Brickhouse Pantry and the Fresh Start Initiative. He has been teaching kids how to grow, shop for, and cook and eat food for about nearly 20 years. Chef Thomas has developed a culturally relevant plant-based curriculum spanning from preschool to high school. He and his team of chefs are currently teaching urban gardening, cooking, and culinary literacy in New York City schools, all across New York City, rather, remotely. Chef Thomas Stevens, I'd like to welcome you to the show. Chef Stevens, Thomas Stevens.
We're here. Am I here? Am I here?
We're here. We're focusing.
Hey. Oh, not focused. Let's see. We live, like she said, we live.
Live. That is hilarious. Don't you love? Okay, so
For real, like let me see.
About the Zoom.
I don't know.
Fun fact about the Zoom calls while you're like adjusting your focus is like
We were focused a little while ago.
I go on Zoom and then I like go live on YouTube, but I have to mute the YouTube. Otherwise, you'll hear the entire conversation in playback. Let me see.
Is that better? Are we good?
Perfect.
We good?
Wow. What kind of camera do you have?
Oh, you putting the camera on the spot? We shouting out Canon?
We're not gonna shout it out. But no, your camera looks great, and I really feel like we should just get straight into it. So, Brickhouse Pantry, and you have the Fresh Start Initiative. So I just want you to differentiate the two companies, and I also want you to tell me like what inspired you to start, both of them.
Okay, so without it being a whole long story, Brickhouse Pantry, I mean, that just stemmed from growing up in the bricks. I grew up in the projects. It's where I started my first food-based business, in my apartment in the projects. And one of my boys who I was working with, who I still work with to this day, he was like, "Yo, there's gotta be like something with the bricks." And I said, "Yo, it's the Brick House." And then we were like, "Nah, there's a song, Brick," you know what I'm saying? So we was like, "We need something else." I said, "Yo, Pantry." And then we was like, Pantry. We threw the pantry in there. So that's kind of where that started from. But I actually didn't use the name until much more recently. So we came up with the name and we kind of tucked it away. And I went through several name changes for the catering business, and then eventually circled back around, and we got to finally use Brickhouse Pantry. A few years back, we switched the name over to Brickhouse Pantry. So, and the Brickhouse Pantry business is our catering company. It is this where I provide, private chef services and meal planning consultations and things like that. And then the Fresh Start Initiative, that is my most recent company. And I personally needed a fresh start. And that's kind of how that birthed. I was coming out of another business called Fresh Made NYC. And I just felt I needed a fresh start. I thought I was really thinking about the name, and I didn't want it to sound like what I was just coming out of, because it was going to be similar, but very different.
Well, what does Fresh Start do?
Fresh Start is, Fresh Start is our culinary program, is our educational side of the business. And it was just the name of our classes originally, the Fresh Start Initiative classes. And then we turned it into its own company and broke it off from Brickhouse Pantry. And that's where we teach our urban gardening classes, our culinary classes, farm to table classes, is what I do my talks through, is what I do my training through for school staff and things like that, kitchen staff. It's where I won, my food advocacy award last year through the Fresh Start Initiative. And that's that side of everything. That is the advocacy side. That is what that business is about.
What what inspired you? What inspired you to go from, Brickhouse Pantry, doing, doing catering, meal prep consultations, just anything under the sun as it relates to food, to going into like, youth advocacy, health advocacy, like what made you make that jump? What inspired that?
Um, so it's where I started. Is where I started. And as I grew and as I developed business, I found myself traveling. I found myself moving around. My hashtag used to be from the hood to the Hamptons, and then it changed from the hood to the Hamptons and back to the hood again. Um, because at the end of the day, where I started is where my heart is, and that's where it's the most needed. So as I grew and as I expanded and as I gained, experience and business savvy and things like that, the one thing that kept tugging at me was go home because this is where they need you. Go home. And I found myself in a position where even starting over wasn't that big of a deal for me. Starting from scratch, getting that fresh start. And that's what it was all about. I just wanted a fresh start. And I feel like that's what we need. A lot of people need a fresh start and want to have a fresh start, whether it's a second chance, third chance, or even just their first chance at something different. And that's kind of where the company was birthed from, that idea. And I had to approach it from my approach, which is culinary and food. And then, so on and so forth, mentoring and things like that.
So, okay, culinary, teaching, mentoring. What is the age group of children that you work with again?
Wow. So we don't really have much of an age range like in a traditional sense. I work with kids. If you're able to pick up something with your fingers, then you can take a class. We can put classes together. I work with kids sometimes starting at 18 months, parent and kid classes, all the way up to college age and beyond. So there's no limit. We approach all ages. I have an early childhood background for not in the sense of like I went to school for it, but I taught early childhood for over 10 years. So, I work with children of all ages.
Okay, and which group do you feel like you connect with more?
That's a great question.
Like every age group has their own, like, tricky.
All right. So can I have two answers to that? Can I have two answers to that?
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into this. So,
For the next 50 minutes, it's your world.
all right, okay. So I love to work with the babies. I love to work with the babies. I love to work with those kids who are 2 to like 5 years old. Um, and the reason for that is I get them while they're young, while it's still everything is still so brand new. That's when they're soaking everything in and everything is like their synapses are firing and they're stimulated. And I feel like a lot of children in our communities, they don't have the experience that a lot of other children have in other communities at that age, as far as food exploration and healthy options and choices and building in, the proper snacking foods and stuff like that at those ages. So I love that age, but I love my high schoolers too. Like I really do. The past couple of years, I've worked really closely with high schoolers, and one thing that drove me to work with the younger children was that I just felt it was a lot more difficult to connect with the older students on a certain level because there's so much that you have to work through because of what they already been through. They're kind of so set in their ways already.
Gotta break.
But in the past few years, I realized, nah, like they're ready too. Their synapses are still firing for new things. They're craving new things. They're craving health, knowledge, wellness, and you just have to put up with the front for a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you got to put up with the guard for a little bit. But once they see, you're trying to give them something real, something tangible,
And
they're
that's
flipping through it.
not going anywhere.
What was that?
That you're not going anywhere.
I mean, we could jump into that. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother thing. If you want to get juicy like that, we could get.
I just feel like I agree. You know, I have past working with youth of all ages, so I can attest as well to the fact that every age group has like let's call it like the working point. You know, every age group has their pros and every age group has their working points. I'm not going to call it cons because anyone under the age of 18 is really a blessing to try to get to know. And it's really a blessing to try to like to mold young minds. You know, it's a responsibility as well. But with that said, like I just noticed that with teenagers and especially teenagers of Black or Latin descent in inner cities have an immense amount of weight on their shoulders. And there's a lot of like, it's not one wall, it's several walls you have to get through to connect. And then, and in order to get through that, at least in my experience, it's part of it has been like trying to like reassuring the students that even if I go somewhere, I'm not going anywhere because like they have access to me because I'm not a traditional teacher. So like you can reach out to me for help. Like I'm here to mentor you as long as you want it, you know?
Absolutely.
You, we have a common student, and she talks about how you provided her with a an internship opportunity, and she values that experience to this day, you know?
So I'm gonna speak on that student right now, and I'm gonna shout her out. You know who you are if you watching. She just shot me an email the other day, and she didn't mention who she was working with currently. She kept it professional. She's like, I'm working with this media company now, whatever. And I knew who she was talking about, and I was like, yo, I'm digging it. But she hit me up and she just said, I want to reach out to you and thank you, for what you did and the opportunity you provided me. And I carry this stuff with me every day. And funny enough, I was just really thinking about her because I think about all my students who I've given internship opportunities to, or who I've worked closely with over the years. And I'm always there for a reach out, for a call, for a check-in, for a meeting, whatever kind of support I could provide. And she was heavy on my mind, and she just like that reached out to me, thanking me. And I emailed her right back and I told her, that just made my day and I really appreciated her reaching out. And I'm so proud of her, and this is the thing with working with this age group. It's just so rewarding. It's a great responsibility, but it's just really, really rewarding. And I do it because it's needed, it's needed, that consistency. And I speak to what you said. I had to leave a middle school program before years ago. And it was like smack in the middle of semester. And it was because of paperwork. So it was like things changed and there was new policies and new regulations, and I had to go and I had to get new fingerprinting done or something like that or whatever. And it was like holiday time. So it took forever. I was gone almost 2 months from the program. And when I came back, the kids literally were like, you traitor, you traitor.
Where did you
left us? I was like, I was clutching my heart. I was like, what? No, I'm here, and it took probably a good 2 to 3 weeks before they started warming back up because they thought I left them.
When COVID hit, so many of my students hit me up like, when are we doing our classes? And I had like impromptu meetings for maybe a month with my students that had nothing to do with like my contracts with the DOE, only because like it's like I felt like by not being their teacher, I was betraying them,
Yo, it's real. It's real. These kids, they on it. They're like, you don't realize the significance of the connections you make with these students, especially in our communities.
So let's talk about what you feel is some like the greatest struggle. Let's focus on high school students, right?
Okay.
Let's focus on like ages 13 to 21, because in New York City, you can be in high school up until the age of 21,
Right.
and that's still a young mind developing.
Right.
But working with students between the ages of 13 and 21, what are some of the struggles that you have experienced with regards to teaching Black and Latino inner city youth? Now, that question can be answered from a student like working with the student directly perspective, or working within the institution perspective, like, being a vendor within an institution and
Okay.
trying.
So for me, and I'll speak to the student. I'll speak to the student because the institution is a whole other animal. So, but the student, at the end of the day, that's the most important part of the work we do. So, um, the biggest struggle is gaining their trust. That's one of the biggest struggles, because what we already touched on is the consistency. And a lot of the time, that is one of the biggest issues we have with our children at those ages in high school, is consistency. Consistency of mostly leadership and role models. And I'm not talking about somebody you can see on TV or follow on social media. All of that is cool, but everybody can't connect to somebody that they can't reach, to somebody that they can't pick up a phone and call or text personally. And that consistency and that reassurance, knowing that that consistent role model or leader in your life is actually available, is a huge difference. And I think that that's one of the biggest struggles, is connecting with these students and gaining their trust, because a lot of times they don't believe you. They're not buying it. You walk in, they're not buying it. They're like, all right, sure, whatever. We'll see,
Nice.
we'll see you when we see you. You know what I'm saying? Like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the biggest struggles, is gaining their trust, and reassuring them, so that they can be confident and do what they feel is inside of them. A lot of these kids have greatness in them, and they're ashamed to let it out, or they're too afraid to let it out, because they don't have a role model or a leader letting them know that it's okay.
Or even worse, sometimes what they have is the complete opposite. They have someone telling them that what they want to do is not okay, and that they have their heads in the clouds, and that they could never accomplish what they're trying to do. And it could be something
Absolutely.
as simple as going to college, you know, um,
Absolutely.
which is really attainable for anybody, because these colleges want people to apply. They want your money.
Don't get me started, girl.
They don't
Do not get me started.
care if it's a loan. They don't care how you giving them the money. They just want your money.
This society, our American society, our American culture, is not built for us people to truly be successful the way we can be and the way we should be. Now, I'm not saying we cannot become successful, because yes, if we conform and we work within the guidelines, then there's a possibility for success. There's many people I know who went to school the traditional way, and they became successful for what they consider to be successful, right? But what did they have to put away or put to the side that was inside of them that they truly loved or were passionate about? What part of their creative spirit did they have to snuff out in order to follow that road? So I'm not about breaking anybody's spirits. I'm not about snuffing out your light or your passion. I'm about embracing it. I'm about celebrating it. And I'm about encouraging that, because at the end of the day, we should be able to be successful in the things that we are passionate about and that we love. We should be able to make a living off of the things that we are brilliant at and that we do so extremely well. And with that being the case, that's what I'm about. Like, I don't go into a culinary class telling the kids that you're going to be a professional chef by taking this class, but I teach them certain things and certain elements that they can take outside of that class and they can put to use in the real world to better and be better equipped for success, which is believing in yourself, confidence, knowing that whatever you do, you can be great at and you can make a living off of it if you know certain things and know how to apply yourself to business, and you don't have to necessarily do it the traditional way.
So I have a question.
Ask away.
So in while you're teaching your classes, you know, you're teaching like these greater lessons of like how whatever you want to do, you can do, right?
Mhm.
But specifically to what you're teaching, specific to your culinary curriculum or your urban gardening curriculum,
Mhm.
um, you know, or even I think you said sometimes you teach nutrition classes. Am I wrong? Am I making that up? I
Farm
think,
to table. So it's not necessarily nutrition because I'm not a nutritionist. I'm a chef.
okay, that's fine. Or even like in your farm to table classes, like how do you believe that these specific classes contribute to the reduction or elimination of generational traumas?
Oh, that's deep.
Considering the fact that you work in inner cities, considering the fact that you're working with the Black and Latino youth, and considering the fact that the Latino youth that you're working with are Black also, so everyone you're working with
Hmm.
is a descendant somehow, you know, of slavery, of, you know, the African slave trade, like they
Wow.
bore the you know, the bad parts of colonialism, you know, and they too are dealing with post-traumatic slavery symptoms,
Yep.
whether they acknowledge it or not. So, you know, we're
Yep.
talking health, we're talking food, we're talking, you know, growing your food, we're talking like how to eat your food, like
It's
how
all it's
feel like
all
that
relevant.
combats generational traumas.
It's all relevant. Like, oh my gosh, all of those things that you're mentioning are all interconnected in some way, right? And you just asked, wow, these questions are serious. So let's see how we can get into this. Now, when we think about food, right? You think about where the food comes from, or at least I think about where it comes from, right? But a lot of people don't, especially teenagers. They're not thinking about necessarily where their food comes from. I'll give you an example. Before quarantine, we asked a student or a group of students what is cinnamon, right? We had cinnamon sticks on a table, and we asked them what it is, and one of the students was like, "It's tree bark," and one of the other students was like, "What? Cinnamon is tree bark?" And they were like all, like wow, blown away. So she was so blown away by learning that it was tree bark that she called her mom right there on the spot. She's like, "Chef, I'm sorry, I gotta call my mom." And I said, "All right, call your mom." She calls her mom. Her mom is like, she's like, "Mom, you know what cinnamon is, where it comes from?" And she's like, yeah, it's tree bark." And she's like, "How you know it's tree bark?" And she says, "Because your grandparents back home have a tree and we get the cinnamon. You remember the tree, blah, blah, blah." And she was like, "Oh, that tree is that." And she said, "Mom, I'm mad at you now. I'm hanging up. Because you never told me this. How come you never told me this?" And when you think about the generation, right? You're,
How dare you?
you're talking about grandma, mom, and then now the daughter doesn't know, right? So we don't know where our food is coming from just one generation out, right? We don't know that we grew this food maybe one or two generations ago. We don't know that we grew our own food, that this is where it came from. This is how you grow it. This is how you plant it. This is how you harvest it, right? So when we talk about changing or helping to fix generational traumas and things like that, it's history, and that's something that we don't have enough of here in America. We don't have enough knowledge of our history, and it's not just where we come from, but it's what we did, right? We don't know what we did and what we used to do and how we used to eat and how we used to prepare, right? So when you talk about slavery and things like that, forget slavery. How about before slavery, or how about after slavery? How about cornrows carried seeds so that wherever you went and migrated to, you can take the seeds out of your hair and plant a new harvest and set up shop right there. You got a whole new garden, and you have food for your whole village, right? When you think about things like that, people are like, "Wow, I never heard of that," or "I never knew that." But we brought farming here. It's in our DNA. So when my students start saying, "This feels so good, this feels so therapeutic," it's because you're connecting with yourself. You're connecting with your history. Not only that, you're now learning where this food comes from. So now these things that you buy, you actually know what it is, and you actually have some knowledge about what you're putting into yourself. So once you get that knowledge, sky is the limit. It applies to everything. Knowledge is key, and I just use culinary, and we at the Fresh Start Initiative just use culinary as a form to start to educate and spark the idea that I need to learn more about myself. I need to learn more about my history and not just where my food comes from, but where I come from.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's or not, but it's just amazing because first off, the food that the students make it's amazing. You know, I'm always trying to come back for seconds, right?
Okay.
Number one. Number two, you know, to give a kid a plate, that's sweet, right? But to give a kid a recipe, that's beautiful. And the reason why that's more beautiful than just the plate is because a plate I eat and then it's gone, but a recipe I will know forever, you know? So I now have a skill set. I now have a trade. I can now feed myself, you know? And because I'm learning the right ways to do this, you know, if they have the right people around them, or even if they reach out to you, they can learn how to become an established business if they wanted to like sell plates. Let's say all they know how to make is a banging burrito. You know how many people in New York love burritos across the world? All I'm gonna do is all I'm doing is selling burritos, you know?
I love burritos.
I see.
You know, I'm letting everybody, people, y'all see me.
But no, but I think that that's a beautiful thing. But also like one thing that we don't really talk about is how we, people of color, people who are descendants of Africans from Africa, and I don't want to pinpoint what part of Africa because
right.
I'm not even going to get into the slave trade and how everything was filtered through West Africa, but that doesn't mean that all the slaves come from West Africa because they could have been from other places. We're not going to go off into that tangent, even though I kind of did a little bit.
It's all good. It's all good. That's why we're here.
What's amazing is the similarities in cuisine that we all have. You know, same things, we just spice it up a little different.
That's one of the main things we talk about in our classes, because it's you know, we do what we call cultural investigations, and we talk heavily about fusion because of that exact aspect. That is, you know, something that is extremely real. And a lot of the time students think that this thing is exclusive to this place, or this is this, or this is that. No, there's fried rice in many different countries all around. There's noodle dishes from many different countries. When you think about pasta, you think about Italy, but noodles came from a different country originally. And noodle dishes are from all around, from, you know, Asia and Italy and, you know, Guyana, and you can get all kinds of noodle dishes everywhere. So
arguably every culture has its own soul food. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we think soul food, we think traditional Southern soul food, but there's like Latin soul food. There's different. Oh my gosh, have you ever had jollof? Am I saying it right? Oh yes. My goodness.
And so good. You see my face, I'm like, of course.
Friend who made the best jollof ever. Like, when I tell you that I ate that and my entire spirit just lit on fire.
That's what soul food is about. So, you know, we have our soul food, right?
Wait, real quick. Before we even get into the next point, I just want to take the opportunity to highlight a brand real quick. Let me tell you, because, okay, so just full disclosure, this brand did not pay me in any way, shape, or form to highlight them. However, I just feel like it's important to know about Glory Foods. So, you know, like right now, everyone's basically boycotting Goya because of their support for the Trump administration. I believe that's the cause, but you know, you ask different people, they give you different things. Mm-hmm. Glory Foods is a brand, an American brand that is Black owned. It was founded in Columbus, Ohio in 1989 by William F. Bill Williams and his three partners, Dan Charna, Iris Cooper, and Garth Henley. They have a line of 17 pre-seasoned canned vegetables. I think they actually have more food than that right now, but today yes, they do. They have like over 64 products nationwide. You can find them pretty much in any supermarket whatsoever. So if you're trying to boycott Goya, not that I'm trying to, whatever, I'm not going into it.
Yeah, we don't got to do it. But yo, shout out to Glory Foods, because in the crunch, I know all about the Glory Foods. You know what I'm saying? In the crunch, I wrapped up them sweet potatoes and stuff like that. When they all, around the holiday, stuff gets sold out or whatever. Them Glory Foods, sweet potatoes and stuff, boom, to make my pies or whatever.
Don't sleep.
I've used it. You know what I'm saying? I'm familiar. Shout out.
Your dollars and support Black businesses.
Absolutely.
Go buy Glory Foods, and preferably buy Glory Foods from a Black owned entity, which is hard. I've been searching. This is a slight deviation. I have been searching for a Black supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist. We have Black farmers markets or Black farms that go to established farmers market, but those things tend to be, especially because of COVID now, one day a week, limited choices of what you can get, although it's super good. Like, I'm really what we really need is like a Black supermarket so bad.
We do. I actually was thinking about starting the Brickhouse Pantry market, but we'll see what happens.
I need you to do this. I need you to do this. That would be amazing. All right. Talking about food, the fact and I love food. Food makes me feel good. Like, what type of food to put me in a type of mood kind of thing.
You know what I'm saying? Like, food is why I started cooking, just because I like it. Like, I wasn't like, yo, I want to cook for people. I was like, yo, I want to eat. Like, that was why I started cooking. Like, yo, I'm hungry and I'm in a big family. I ain't got time to wait. Like, I need to learn to cook something.
You need to learn to cook so I can eat as I cook. So
that's it,
when I'm already full. That's messed up. Not really. All right. So what kind of foods would you recommend to suppress anxiety, curb sugar cravings for diabetics, curb meat cravings for new vegans, salt cravings for those with high blood pressure, even cheer up somebody who's down? Like, what foods do you recommend? Chef?
Wow. That's a serious line of questioning right there.
I know, but I feel like you're equipped to answer it. You are.
Yeah, I'm bring it. We good. I just don't know if we got enough time to really get deep into this, because we on here to keep it funky. So let's start. What was the first one? The first one was
if I'm
anxiety, right? So let's talk about anxiety real quick. Let's talk about mental health real quick. And shout out to everybody who's been supporting the mental health movement and that whole thing. Like, I'm all about that, supporting the mental health and everything. So
oh wait, I didn't plan this one, but if you are someone who's interested in learning about mental health or hearing about someone's experiences, Shook Ones, Charlemagne the God.
Holla. So, all right. Cleanse, okay? And I'm gonna probably say this again and again and again while we talk about this, but I wouldn't say foods to suppress anxiety, because first we have to know what causes things, right? We have to know what causes high blood pressure, what causes diabetes, what causes anxiety, right? And when we think about mental health, our mental functions come from our brain, and our brain eats, right? What does our brain eat? Our brain eats sugar. So you have to start really understanding the science behind the brain food, and then where the brain food is coming from, right? What parts of our body? There's 3 sources that supplies the sugar to our brain that we need, right? So if we don't get a sufficient amount of nutrients to the brain, the first symptom of that is erratic behavior, mood swings, and things like that. Then you go further and you get into anxiety, depression, and things like that. And it all stems back to dietary habits, right? So it's not about suppressing anxiety, because you never want to suppress something, right? You want to
Alleviate it.
get down to the root of it, and you want to eliminate it. So the first thing you need to do is cleanse, right? And then you need to learn what sugars you need in your body to feed your brain properly.
But when you say cleanse, right?
Mhm.
I feel like I hear cleanse and I'm hearing drinks, like green drinks. You know what I'm saying? My brain processes it like that. But when you say cleanse, what are you saying really? What do you mean by that?
So when I say cleanse, I'm talking about just detoxifying yourself from processed foods, from unnatural sugars, refined starches, things like that. Um, Even falling back from meat products and dairy for a while. When you cleanse, it's
No.
about detoxifying your body and giving it time, giving the detoxification time to actually register, for your body to actually get rid of the toxins. And that takes time, because we don't all have days that we can just take without eating and fasting and whatever like that. We don't really have that type of lifestyle here in this country, especially in New York. So it takes time. You have to learn what types of foods you can eat while you're detoxing. And all of this is just educating yourself. It doesn't take a lot. It takes just a little research to learn about these specific things. But
Are there any books or like YouTube videos that you would
gosh,
recommend to someone who's
um,
like starting out? I want to learn how to live a healthier lifestyle. I'm not really with diet culture, but I could afford to lose a few pounds. Or
I'm not with diet culture either at all.
no,
Like I don't. I
like
would.
the person who comes from that mentality, right? If they're listening right now and they're like, yo, I feel you, chef, I want to detox too, but I'm not really trying to diet. Like, what book should I read? Like, what YouTube should I watch? What would you recommend? Do you have any recommendations?
So I have a ton of books, and I've read through all of them. And a lot of them have very vital information. But then more recently, I've been finding that I'm not getting the most out of a lot of the books that I've been purchasing and reading. So what I can say is holla at the Elouise Show. Chef is going to provide her a recommended book list to give to anybody who's interested. But in
Yeah.
the meantime, in between time, if you do want to cleanse, I would say look look into any Tao or Tao in about longevity and health. Uh, because Western medicine, like that means outside of this country, when you go to other countries where they teach nutrition as part of your as part of treatment, right? Because at the end of the day, when you become a physician here, they don't even give rudimentary education in nutrition, right? And health. It's all about symptoms and medicine and treating symptoms and diagnosing ailments and then treating those ailments with medicines and things like that, but not with health and nutrition. So that is not the case in many other parts of the world. So we have to really start looking at what causes these things, because when you have anxiety, do they tell you this is the new diet you should have, or do they tell you this is what you should practice and this is the medicine you should take?
The pill you need to take. That's what.
This is the pill you need to take. This is the medication you need, but they don't tell you you should stop eating this or you should stop eating that, or you need to eat a little more of this and a little less of that. You know what I mean? And it's not a diet. So anybody watching right now, anybody watching, I'm not talking about going on a diet. It's about lifestyle changes. It's about learning how to eat and what to eat, not necessarily going on a diet. I would never tell someone go on a diet, because what that means is that when you're done, you're going to come off the diet. But what are you coming off that diet to go back to, right? So it's about making the choices that you're going to stay with. It's about changing your habits and embracing your habits.
And falling in love with the process.
All that. All right. Now you mentioned diabetes. And curbing sugar cravings. So we're gonna go through this part. We're gonna go through the rest of these questions real quick because what I was just saying is a part of all of the rest of these questions. So diabetes is the same thing. You have to learn about diabetes, right? So what is diabetes and what causes it? Sugar doesn't cause diabetes. Okay. Once you have diabetes, sugar then affects your diabetes, right? You have to be careful with your sugar intake once you have it. But what causes it? What foods? Fat-rich foods, right? So if you're eating a lot of meat and a lot of fat-rich content, then that causes the IR, which is your insulin, right? It affects your insulin. And when your insulin is not working properly, you have diabetes. So then you have the sugar, right? So here's the thing: sugar cravings, fruit. Go for it.
I have a question.
Ask away.
You tell me that dark chocolate doesn't create diabetes, but pernil does? Pork does?
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes. Yes. Dark chocolate is actually really good for you. Now, unless it's, loaded up with sugar, but then it probably wouldn't be dark chocolate, right? The more dark it is, the more raw it is, the better. Pernil is one of the biggest contributors because of how fatty it is, which is why I typically try not to have pernil very often, if at all. I mean, I've been vegetarian, pescatarian, vegan, and then back onto the block, smacking up some pernil again. So, like, you talking to somebody who's not just speaking it, I actually live it, and I practice all the things that I talk about at one point or another. And yes, and it's not just pernil. You get a lot of fat from salmon. You get a lot of fat from certain fish. So if your intake is great in fat-rich foods, especially meats and dairy and stuff like that, then you are more likely to become diabetic. Once you have issues with your insulin, then the sugar is a problem, right? It's not that people that are diabetic, they crave sugar and the sugar is what caused it and now they're craving it and they can't. No, that's just after you have diabetes. It's once you have it, because now the sugar levels are a problem. So what I would say to help curb that is, 1, cleanse. 2, intermittent fast, because that helps regulate your insulin levels naturally. And then 3, start picking up more natural sugary things like fruit.
That's what you were getting into.
Yeah, that's the thing with that. Same thing with high blood pressure. Curb your salt. No, your arteries get hardened, and cholesterol is a major contributing factor to high blood pressure. So you have to be careful with your meat intake. The same thing, fat-rich foods and stuff like that causes these problems like high blood pressure. Once you have high blood pressure, salt becomes your enemy, but it doesn't cause the high blood pressure. So obviously, if you overdo it on salt, you can do damage to yourself. But salt content is not necessarily what's causing the problem. What are we shaking the salt on? You're not just eating salt, right? What are you putting salt on typically? You're shaking it onto a steak. Shaking it onto a burger.
You put salt onto your spoon and just like.
Yeah, we're not spooning the sea salt. You feel me? We're not going to the beach and swimming with our mouth open. You know what I'm saying? So that's not what's happening. What's happening is that we're shaking that salt on deep fried foods, on those deep fried French fries, on that burger, on all of those different things that is going to contribute very quickly to your high blood pressure. And then once you have it, now you have the issue. Now you have to watch your salt intake very carefully because you already have the high blood pressure. So you need to cleanse your body. You need to start taking in a more balanced diet so that your arteries don't have, and your digestive tract, that's high blood pressure. Your digestive tract has too much toxins and too much crust, I'll say.
And it's not on my end for the first time. Last week, my cousin called me 3 times.
I thought I was on Do Not Disturb, but I guess not.
What happened? All right, I have a question. All right. We good. I have a question. I wanted to know, so even though, you cleanse, right? And you're getting on the right track, but if you have a food craving and you want to eat some chocolate or some dark chocolate, like once in a blue moon, it's okay, right? It's just not, don't eat chocolate every day.
Listen, don't cheat yourself, treat yourself. That's what I always say. You just can't overtreat yourself. Like, it's called a treat for a reason, right? If you eat it every day, it ain't a treat. It's just a habit. It's just your everyday lifestyle. So you want to just have a treat? Of course.
Listen,
Moderation is what I do. It's like, I'm going to eat this, but I'm not going to eat it very often because I know the damage it could do if I start consuming this way too much.
I
So,
am so glad that you said that
uh-huh.
because I found a brand that I love. Again,
Allah.
for nothing, but on Instagram, I discovered this brand maybe I want to say like a month ago on Instagram, Threesome Chocolates, right? And their name I think is intentional because when you look at the company
First of
description,
all, I was gonna say I love that name and I love chocolate. So we already got two, 2 out of 3. I just need one more thing. Let's go.
listen, they when you look at the description, they talk about how chocolate is an aphrodisiac and how
You
they
already know.
with the aroma that you have, as well as like, how well it tastes. So with that said, I just want to let you know, look at these flavors they have, chef. Ruby and white chocolate, red velvet crunch bar. Does
Mm.
that oh my goodness, I could just taste that right now. Honey caramel dip.
First of all,
I don't know
my cousin called her man honey dip. So, I'm gonna have to put on to this too.
what dip is Henny, like Hennessy, Henny caramel dip. Like, do you know how good that sounds to me? The tequila caramel dip.
I see that. I know my camera is kind of, y'all saw the little drool? Okay.
Oh my goodness.
You know what I'm saying?
Milk and gold chocolate cinnamon crunch bar. I cannot deal with these flavors.
First of all, why are you doing this to me? My chops is really getting a little moist right now. Pause.
Oh my
Like,
God.
for real. You're supposed to have the chocolate waiting for, like, I'm supposed to have a piece of that right here so I could be like, and now we about to taste it. Boom. Cause like all that description just now got me all, I forgot what we was even talking about because I'm a chocolate fanatic.
Which one did you want? You want the Henny dip? You want the red velvet? Or you want
Get
the
that Henny dip. Let me get that red velvet and let me get whatever's the darkest you got because I like the raw cacao too.
2020? Okay. We are still technically in quarantine and this second wave may be coming. So you can get one thing. What would you like?
Let's go with the Henny dip. I'm gonna try that Henny dip.
I'm gonna send you some Henny dip. I'm gonna support a Black-owned business.
You
I'm,
heard?
help a friend out with a craving, right?
You heard? So yeah, let's do that. And then I'm gonna pay it forward. So you gonna tell me who I need to send something to too, and I'm gonna order some Threesome chocolate, and I'm gonna send that to somebody.
Let's send it to our student.
Oh.
To our student. All right. We kind of spoke about that. Can you describe, this is a good one. Can you describe the difference between soul food and food for your soul?
I feel like we was going into that a few minutes ago.
We have
That's wow. That's girl. What you got, a philosophy book when you ask these questions? Like, what's going on? This is some good deep stuff right here. I like that.
navigating life, interested in the minds of dope individuals.
You heard? That's what I'm talking about. So the difference between soul food and food for the soul, which is very interesting because my site used to say something along those lines that it was food for the soul, from the heart for the soul. And I think that anything that feeds you, like you mentioned with the jollof, anything that somebody put their heart into when they make it, and you could taste that energy, right? It's not just the food, but it's the energy, right? Because we pour into everything that we do. And when you're making a dish, when I'm making a dish, people often ask me, what'd you do to this? Like, you gave me the recipe, but it didn't taste like yours. And I'm like, what mood you was in when you made that dish? Because when I made the dish, my energy was legit happy and passionate, and I was putting love all into that food. So like,
they're always said the most important ingredient in any dish you make is love.
that's a fact. So you can't
And
So
then,
anything that you really,
and then I also pray over my dishes because I never know what I'm doing. It's always an experiment. So I'm always praying.
Lord, please let this taste right, because this is the last thing I'm making before I go to bed. But so the difference for me really is, it's just a frame of mind. Like, are you looking at soul food as in a traditional sense, like food that derived from slave food, and now it's like become the soul food, which is the collard greens, mac and cheese, southern, whatever? Or is it something that takes you to a place? Is it something that when you bite into it, you're transported, your mind, your everything is transported somewhere to a memory or to a time in your life that makes you feel good, right? And that could be any kind of food. So the difference between soul food, which is like in a traditional sense of what we eat when we're gonna throw down on the holidays and all of that stuff, but when we get together on a Sunday and we got the whole family and we like, yo, we gonna do this soul food, or is it something that's really feeding your spirit at the time? Like it could be anything. It could be Jello salad, if you ever even heard of that. But some people, that's for them, that's like soul food because it transports them to a time in their childhood when they were the happiest or whatever, and it feeds them in that way. So that's the real difference for me between soul food and food for the soul, something that's just gonna feed your spirit, that transports you to a time and place.
Name one food that is food for your soul, and then I'll do the same.
For me, that's food for my soul. Ooh, I'm gonna say one thing that's food for my soul is homemade southern style biscuits like my grandmama used to make. And I'm not saying that to be funny, but not my mama biscuits. That's the food for my soul is my grandmama biscuits. That's for me.
So for me, I'm torn in between a nice cold avocado, not a hot avocado from Mexico, but the type that grows in the Caribbean, like Puerto Rico. I can eat that straight, cut it in half with a spoon, that real straight. And I'm also torn between like that and a mango. And similar thing, like it's reminiscent of my grandmother. My grandmother used to love food, and like I just like my childhood includes a lot of moments eating fruits with my grandmother, like even oranges and stuff like that. So like,
Right.
where for a lot of people, soul food is like cooked food, like just fruits. For me, like it brings me back to like 5-year-old me, 4-year-old me, you know?
Right. And that's what that is for me. So it was what I did with my grandmother. Like it's one of the first things that I recipeed from scratch with her. And it was at times when we were like, what are we gonna eat? Like what can we eat? What do we have here that we can make? And we made that. She said, grab this, grab that, and we made dough and we made biscuits. And the happiness and joy that I felt in like making it with her and baking it, and just the accomplishment I felt of like doing this as a young kid, and then putting some warm butter on that, a little bit of honey, and eating that. Like anytime I have anything similar to that, or I make that recipe, that is food for my soul because I'm transported to that place. And you know what?
So good.
That is what you need in your spirit. It's not about necessarily anything super healthy or whatever. When you want to eat something that creates joy and happiness, right? To bring your mood up, you need that food for your soul. You know what I'm saying? You need that mango. You need that avocado. You need that grandmama biscuit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know? All right. One more question. What's 2 more questions? I need to know.
One more. That's it.
Oh, we're running out of time. We got 5 minutes.
Oh snap!
The conversation is flowing. It's cool. I need to know before we get off this call. I need you to describe your overall mission and how you believe it contributes to the uplifting of your community. And by your community, we can say the Bronx, we could say New York, we could say Black people, we can say Latin people.
We're gonna
However,
we're gonna say our people because we're gonna encompass all the people that we come from a similar descent or the same descent, not similar. we're going to say our people, right? And my overall mission is education, enlightenment, and that's by any means. So I don't want to educate everybody so that they listen to me and what I have to say. I want to open up people's minds, my students and anybody who comes into contact with the Fresh Start Initiative or even Brickhouse Pantry, to realize the connections that we have with each other and to become, take on the mindset of learning, right? From whoever has knowledge to offer, not just me. So my mission to, to uplift my community, uplift my people. When I say community, I mean all my people. That mission is, I think I'm doing my part by encouraging that, by opening up the doors for all people who have something to offer to anybody who's willing to listen. I'm offering that, as part of our education, as a mentor to my mentees. I'm letting them know I'm going to give you what I got, but I'm also going to open up the door so you can get what this person has and what that person has as well. And I think that is what we need. We need more connectivity. We need more community. We say community all the time, but I see so many people individualizing themselves within the community as educators and everything else, when at the end of the day, we need to come together because there's power in numbers and there's knowledge that needs to be shared. It's not about individualizing yourself. So I try not to ever individualize myself in the sense of an educator or a teacher. I'm also a student. I want to be taught. So that is a lesson that I like to give to everybody. As you learn and as you grow and as you teach, remember you're still a student. You can't be a teacher unless you're an active student at the same time. So that's my contribution. I want to push people to their fullest potential and beyond. I look at myself as a ladder, as a boost for everybody who comes across my path. And that's how I contribute. I try to stay in my lane, but I try to push you to your next level as well.
And I've witnessed that firsthand, and I'd like to thank you for taking me on as a mentee and opening up, what everyone that up to me and helping me out with developing everything that I'm working on. I truly appreciate it. You're
Sorry, I have a dog and we're live.
You're definitely a great member of the community. You're definitely a leader. And you talk the talk, but you walk the walk too. And I feel like, you're someone to watch and pay attention to. And I hope that, the followers, the viewers follow you on your Instagram. They check out your page. They get catering from BrickHousePantry.com.
Thanks for the plug. All that. Like, I'm not about all of that, but if you do it. I'm happy for all the business and everything. So, do it. If you can do it, I appreciate it.
You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
My favorite question. What is your favorite part about being a Black man in 2020?
Ooh, favorite part about being a Black man in 2020? That's a dope question. And I'm going to tell you straight up, my favorite part about being a Black man right now in 2020 is my potential. That's my favorite part right now about being a Black man in 2020. And when I say my potential, I mean the potential of Black men. I think right now we're starting to awaken and realize how much we can accomplish and how much we can do. And I want everybody who's listening to this to realize that sky is not the limit. I'm going to tell you straight up, sky is not the limit because there's space beyond the sky. So don't even think sky is the limit. Shoot for whatever you want to shoot for, because right now we're starting to come to the point where we realize how much potential we actually have, right? Through everything we're going through right now, you see us rising up. And that's my favorite part about being Black right now, being a Black man in 2020. My potential is off the charts. I feel so motivated right now in 2020, even with everything going on. I feel so motivated. I feel fired up, and I feel fired up for what my people have in store for the future.
Let's get this work.
Let's do this. Let's get this work.
Get it.
Holla at your boy.
Well, Chef Thomas Stevens, I would like to personally thank you for coming on to the Elouise Show. Okay. It
Oh,
is
no doubt.
it has been a great conversation. And